editing the video for this week and I realized I forgot to record an intro. Introduce Max too. This is my chocolate lab. He's almost a year old. He's got a couple more days. He'll be a full year old at that point. He's hyper as hell. We're out here playing with the ball. So yeah, this week's video, I fixed that idle issue that I was complaining about while I was driving down the road the other day. I got that solved, got it all figured out. I also finished installing the gauge for the most part. I still have not even right now installed the wideband in the manifold, but I'll get it done. It's not super important right now. I was just trying to get the wiring mainly out of the way. It's not like it's hard to install an O2 sensor. I just don't feel like jacking the car up right this second. I also install a stereo system, a little side hustle money. Yeah, I don't know, hope you enjoy the video. Like, subscribe. More dog videos to come probably, right? Thanks, bye. Alright, so I want to work on that crappy idle issue that I had the other day in the video before. There's a little plate, like I said, that I added down here that rotated the idle air control before it was hitting the radiator right here and kind of denting the fins, and I don't want that. And I actually have like a cooling shroud to help it cool a little better, and it's like thick, so I need any of the room that I can get here. And the way this is now, it'll work. I'm gonna have to pull it apart and see if I can figure out how it's supposed to actually be on there, and hopefully I still have some room. I'll let you guys know what I figure out. Moment of truth. I had the idle air control completely backwards. My mistake. I spun it around, put some Honda Bond on it, and put it back on the car, the throttle body, and let's see what happens. The other day when I had started at cold start, it wouldn't idle at all. It basically would stall out unless I kept it revved. So here we go. Seems like it's working now. So I didn't notice it at first because there was a vacuum leak out of the port that used to have coolant going into it. So when I capped that off, then that's when it like really showed the troubles that it was having and wouldn't idle at all. Basically that vacuum leak was the idle, but it wouldn't go below 1500 RPMs, which is kind of annoying. So right now a cold start, it should be like it is now, and then just work its way down in the next couple minutes, and I'll leave it running and make sure that that happens. But it seems like it's fixed. Alright, I got everything done down here, wired in all my connectors. I mounted those 3 relays on some riv nuts so they're not just flopping around. Hopefully they'll make the kick panel fit a little better. Turn the gauge on for you real quick. I don't have the O2 sensor in the downpipe, so the O2 sensor is not going to read if I start it. But the vacuum gauge is obviously hooked up, or vacuum boost gauge. So we'll display that information there. Next step would be I've got to hook up one more wire for the MAC valve. There's no pin in the connector on the ECU for that because it's an aftermarket harness. So I'm gonna have to get a pin and install it so I can hook up that wire. I gotta put the wideband in the exhaust pipe like I said, and then finally turn on the ethanol content sensor in K-Pro and make sure that that's reading. All things I'll do very soon. But at least this is in. Idling a lot better, like I said in the other video. I got that idle air control valve put on correctly, and now it seems to idle just fine. Alright, so another little thing I do for money on the side. Obviously car parts are expensive. I install audio. This obviously isn't like top-end stuff. This guy just wants something basic. He purchased this stuff. I just told him I would install it. We got just a basic Rockville powered sub, an Alpine head unit. It does not look like it has Bluetooth, just aux and USB. And then I already did some Harmony audio speakers, also something that the customer purchased in his Chevy pickup here. So I'm going to get working on this, run the power wire, the RCAs, change out the head unit. I'll kind of update you along the way. Alright, I got the harness prepped here. I soldered all the wires here, taped up everything really nice. I left a little pigtail here for the remote wire with a quick disconnect on it that will hook right up to here to make things simple. And I also did that for this wire as well. This is going to be the accessory wire, the wire that turns the radio on. This customer opted out of getting the harness that retains the door chimes and whatnot through the data system, which also does the accessory wire for the radio. So I'll just hardwire that to the actual accessory wire on the ignition switch, and then it'll turn on just fine, but it won't have the chimes and whatnot. I'm gonna get to work taking apart the dash and get ready to install. Alright, the thing I love about these older Chevy trucks, like the early 2000s, like this one here, is how easy they come apart. I'm gonna try and record it. I'm sure many of you have done this before, but what I do typically is I tilt the steering wheel all the way down. I take the ignition key, which I have to locate, and I put the truck down into first gear. And I usually start up in this corner here, just kind of work my way around here, and then this top piece is a little tight. You can just pop that up there, and then it just comes off that simply. And then I turn the hazard lights on. I'm going to turn those off. For the radio itself, there's just a couple 7mm screws, which I'm going to attempt to take out and record. I'll probably lose all of them. Two out of three. Well, I didn't lose it. I assure you it's down there somewhere. I will locate it in just a moment. I'm going to put the car back into park and give this thing a yank. Kind of tilt it down and figure out why it's so dang tight in the dash. It looks like it is the antenna connector. I'm going to stop recording and finish getting this out here so I can turn the key off. Alright guys, here's where we're at. So I installed everything yesterday, had everything wired in, thought it was good to go. Turned on the key, went to play, and all I had was the bass from that little subwoofer that I was installing. I thought, well, maybe there's a factory amp, so I started looking for an amp turn-on wire, couldn't find anything, and then so I started comparing the harness to the factory harness. If I went and plugged this into the vehicle, the speaker wires on this harness are over here on this side of the plug, on the right side, looking at this point of view. On the factory side, they're over here by the ground where there's no wires, so of course the speakers would never play. So what I had to do today is I had to go buy a different harness, and if you look at and compare these two, the speaker wires on this one are on this side versus mainly on this side here for this one. And they are in the same orientation as far as being flipped over one from the other. So now I've got to cut this apart, resolder all the wires, plug it in and test it, and then hopefully I can show you guys a final product. Just like that. It's all soldered up, ready to go. There's the old one. I want to point out a couple things here, one of which I understand completely that I could have just technically unpinned this one. Found the correct pin out, repinned it because the plug is the same, the wires are and the pins are the same, they're just in the wrong order. So I could have fixed that myself and saved the $12, but you get to a point where how much is your time worth, and how much time is worth $12, and it's not very much, I can tell you that. So the half-hour minimum that it would have took me to find the wiring diagram or compare it in the pickup and sit there back and forth trying to figure out where these pins go, I assure you would be, at least 30 minutes, probably more like an hour. So it just wasn't worth it. I quickly could just run to the store and get this. Easy to solder the wires. I have way less than a half hour, maybe a half hour with drive time, but it was a lot simpler than fiddling around with this other stuff here. I'm gonna get it plugged in and cross my fingers that it works. All right, moment of truth. I just want to point out that I did put all 3 screws back in. I found it. It was on the floor, just like I thought. Here we go. All right, copyright. There we go. and it works. That's freaking great. Now time to put it back together and call the customer. All right, got the kick panel all back on. Sounds good. Amp and stuff is kind of tied up there. He didn't want me to drill any holes, so I just used some Velcro that he supplied. It's stuck pretty good. I mean, obviously there's going to wiggle because the carpet has some wiggle, but it doesn't just fall over. So I'm sure that's all he really wanted. Got the dash all back together here. Radio is in, everything's clipped. I kind of just used some more of that Velcro and put his little base remote there so he can adjust it in case he doesn't want to be bumping all the time. It sounds all right. It's not super loud. Sounds good at like mid volume, but if you start turning it up, it kind of fades off subwoofer wise. Plenty of trouble though. I've considered buying one of these Rockville subs at some point. I just figured it would probably be about how it is now, and I would have put it in the trunk of a car, so it would have been even worse, to be honest. If you're looking for something that sounds like a crappy factory radio, like a modern factory radio, that probably is the ticket. If you want some actual bass, these little compact things, especially cheap brands like Rockville, just are not gonna do it. You know, it doesn't sound bad, it just doesn't sound great, and it's not super loud. So in a pickup truck, it probably isn't. It's gonna work just fine for what he's after. And like I said, in the trunk of a car, you probably would hardly notice that it was there, so I wouldn't recommend.